On his way home from one of his routine air shows, Bob Hoover realized that something is wrong with the plane in midair while he's flying the plane because 2 propellers just stopped working. And because he was one of the best pilots of that time, he crash landed the airplane, and right after the crash, he goes to the airplane to inspect what went wrong, and as he suspected, the plane was fueled with jet fuel instead of gasoline, which was common for a World War II airplane. And in that moment, he's of course outraged to the mechanic who serviced the plane, who put that jet fuel inside of that plane. And so upon his arrival at the airport, Bob of course asks where the mechanic is so that he can go over and see him. And this young mechanic is sitting in complete agony. He is crying because number one, he almost killed one of the most famous pilots at that time, and number two, he completely ruined an extremely expensive airplane that he will likely never be able to pay back. And so he's sitting there, he thinks his career is over, the whole thing just complete and utter agonizing pain inside of his head. And the moment Bob arrives, he puts his arm around the mechanic and says, "To show you, I'm sure you will never do this again. I want you to service my F-51 plane tomorrow during the show." And he walks off. Now, when I first heard this story, I was mesmerized by Bob's character. I was in complete awe and I was jealous, and I also knew that I never showed that type of character in my life at that time, and still now I haven't done that yet. And so obviously this story had an impact on me, but not only this story, what happened afterwards also had a massive impact. Here's the thing, the young mechanic would tell this story because he's also in awe, over and over and over again, and because of that it caught the attention of Flight Operations, a very small magazine, and because of that article in that magazine, Dale Carnegie used this story in his cult classic book How to Influence and Influence People, where I read this story for the first time. Now, this book has sold 20 million copies and has been in print for over 70 years and is still in print today. How many people have heard this story because of that book? I don't know, perhaps 100 million. And so it's very interesting to see how 4 seconds of kindness had such a big impact that 100 million people are now aware of your story, aware of your name. Those 4 seconds, that one sentence that Bob Hoover said to the mechanic, had a bigger impact than his entire career combined. Now, selfish as I am, after hearing this story, I ask myself if this is something that can be repeated. Is this repeatable? Can I use kindness and friendliness myself to turn my dreams into reality? And so that's what this video is about. In this video, we will try to answer this question precisely. And in order to do that, let's look at what science has to say about it first. In a 2008 study done at Harvard Business School, Michael Norton found that giving money to someone else lifted the participants' happiness levels more than using that money on themselves. Now, you might be thinking by yourself, well, becoming happy is not the same as becoming successful, becoming famous, reaching 100 million people or something like that. And that is of course true. And that is why we have to combine this to some other research to really get the full picture. And so let me read a couple of fragments out of a book that I really care about, The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acker. In one research, they showed that doctors put in a positive mood before making a diagnosis show almost 3 times more intelligence and creativity than doctors in a neutral state, and they make accurate diagnosis 19% faster. Wow. In another study, they measured the initial level of positive emotions in 272 employees, then followed their job performance over the next 18 months. And they found that those who were happier at the beginning ended up receiving better evaluations and higher pay later on. And yet another study found that how happy individuals were as college freshmen predicted how high their income was 19 years later, regardless of their initial level of wealth. Now, these findings, I could keep on reading in a book like this. I mean, these findings are huge. And so looking at research, scientific research like this, makes me think of some of the most famous historical figures in history. Historical figures in history, yeah, that's kind of saying the same thing. Anyway, Jesus Christ, for example, or Marcus Aurelius, for example, who during the Antonine Plague, one of the darkest moments in human history, a plague that killed millions of people, he took all the jewelry and gold from the palace, spent 2 months selling it, and then took all of that money and gave that back to the people of Rome. He gave that back. And people like Marcus Aurelius are are not the regular type of fame that we now see, that empty type of fame in Hollywood figures. No. Marcus has been famous for 2,000 years. This is a completely different level than what we see today in today's media landscape. And so learning from these figures who clearly gave, they put their lives full of giving to the rest, giving to other people, is crucial. Now, the last story that I want to explain to you is actually a somewhat personal story. When I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, the only thing that I wanted to do was be the famous kid in school, be the popular kid, the kid that everybody expects everything from. And no matter how hard I tried, I never seemed to be noticed as such a kid at all. Except for one thing my mom did. Now, in order to understand how powerful the thing was that she was doing, you have to know a little bit about our situation. So my mom was very poor. She didn't have a partner to help out or anything like that. We were living on the leftovers of an apartment building on 28 square meters. For reference, that's about the size of the room that you're watching this video in right now. So my mom didn't have a lot of money. She didn't have money to pay for birthday parties and things like that. But oftentimes, because she was so generous, she would do that anyway and sacrifice her own pleasures for that. Now, what she would do on those birthday parties was very interesting. She would buy 200 presents of $1. Then she would take one of those blow-up swimming pools. She would make fishing hooks out of regular sticks. And then everybody who came to my birthday party was allowed to take one of those sticks and fish presents out. And as a result, all of the children went home with more presents than I got on my own birthday. Now, as a kid, I didn't really like this too much because it was my birthday and I wanted to be the center of attention and wanted to be at least the kid with most presents. But something interesting happened. Because of this, my birthday was the most famous birthday in school. And when I say this, I'm obviously aware that I'm not a popular kid, and at the time it's just a birthday party that's popular. But what's interesting is that we can now afterwards analyze, why was that birthday party so famous? Why did it work? Well, ironically, it was a birthday party that was not about the birthday kid, but about everybody else. It was the opposite of a birthday party. And so the moral of the story is, obviously, if you want to have the best birthday party, make sure it's about everybody else. If you want to have the best YouTube channel, make sure it's about everybody else. If you want to have the best art exhibition, make sure it's about everybody else. You get the picture. The secret to making your dream come true might just be trying to make everybody else's dream come true instead. Now, to be fair, the proof that I provided in this video for the claim that giving will make all your dreams come true is not really that substantial, or at least not substantial enough. And the truth is that the proof for a claim like this might never be substantial enough, because something like giving as a strategy is so elusive that it's just very hard to prove things around that. The only thing we can say with certainty is that if we look at the science, there are massive benefits connected to giving, both in your brain as well as in your success levels, as well as in your performance, career-wise, etc., etc., etc. And so when it comes to turning your dreams into reality, a more ideal video would be a video that gives you a process, a step-by-step guide towards turning those dreams into reality, a guide that has some certainty. And as much as I would want to talk about that, that would make this video way too long, and so I'm very sorry, but we are not going to do that, predominantly because I already did. It's called Smart Artists Do This, How to Become Famous. It's linked up in the description and in the end screen. That said, get the hell out of here.